on the table. And turn your face whichever way you like. Would you like something under your face so to devinyl it? Have you got a towel? That brown towel? That is so, yeah, you're a wordsmith, Alison. There you go. Okay, so, I don't know whose book that is. All right, so I really flogged that horse this morning, didn't I, teaching the ATM about, you know, the intent of observing yourself in order to work with other people. So we can go through and you can just wander around and have a look and see what you think about Linda's alignment. So with now you'll go through the sequences, but very briefly, remember, because you're working with the same person, so it's simply like a reminder. You don't have to rock their heel in and out a million times. It's just maybe once or twice, you know, just about this kind of this idea of recapping, coming back and recapping, checking in. It's a bit like checking in. How's this going now? How's this going now? Now, so, but I'm not going to go through all that necessarily, but because I haven't worked with Linda, I'm just having a little look so that I don't dive straight in. Oh, thank you. Yeah, look, use your cameraman instincts because they're better than mine, I reckon. Yeah, if you listen to me, you'll get dud shots every time. So, because this part of the lesson is I'm more there at that end, Linda's head end. I want to make sure that this end back here is sort of settled and relaxed. So one thing I'm going to do that's just a little bit different is pop something under her ankles. Now you don't need this for everybody, but because Linda's ankles are quite high, it just means that there might be some weight. Maybe not. It's just something that I'm observing, and you'll get a sense that sometimes when we see stuff. Oh yeah. When we see, you can try. We can try both, and we'll let Linda decide which do you like. There's that high one, that low one, or lift up. Low one, okay. And is that because you like to feel your toes on the floor? Okay, there you go. All right. So if we see a space, sometimes we pat it because it can mean that there's a bit of work being done there or not. A little bit more acute pressure on a small spot. But maybe not. She might have been perfectly fine, but that's just what I'm seeing, just to let you know. And then I'm just having a feel for, you know, how much work her legs are doing or not doing and how available her pelvis is. So what I'm seeing in terms of alignment is more on this leg. This one's a little bit of an outrigger, but it's not particularly easier to move. And she can go both ways, so I'm not particularly fussed either way. I'm just noticing as I go around. Well, I'm suggesting, I don't know for sure, but that leg looks straighter and that one looks more angled. But as I was saying to somebody, in standing, you don't always know that because someone can be like this and you can assume that this leg that's out, if I exaggerate, isn't taking much weight, but actually they can be pushing. And if you put force plates under them, they actually got more pressure on this foot than this foot, which is weird. But, you know, that's the joy we have of having force plates when we actually get real feedback. So today's lesson, so think about the stuff that we did yesterday, exploring the availability of movement, the rotation, rolling over the toes, the heels in and out, which is the sort of rotation of the shin relative to the knee, the amount of rotation, freedom that's available in the hip joint, clarifying for them where the hip joints are, and then doing a bit of anatomy, having a bit of anatomy lesson with the person about the PSIS is here, feeling underneath here for the iliac crest, and if they're happy with the sit bones and the greater trochanter, so all that, and then putting that in context of moving, the anterior posterior tilt, maybe a little bit of lifting, and the side. That's what we did yesterday. Is that too fast? You got it? Got it? Because you've done it. Just a little bit of unweighting. So thinking about this morning, what we did in the ATM, which was almost entirely recapping. And the only new things in this morning's, can I just borrow that stool, please? The only new things in the ATM this morning were the change in conversation about the how, and then the other new thing this morning was the rocking of the head in that way, and the rocking of the pelvis, which you did, feeling the connection between the two, and then going back and putting the leg up on the table. Are there any comments about the ATM from this morning? Any questions or feedback or comments? Or I've got her on for today, for now, just for comfort. Yeah. The line. Vertical to you. Reference to you. You're vertical. Yep. You are the center of our universe, Philippa. It's always reference to you. Yep. Yes. Yep. Oh, to get the head. So actually what we're doing today and tomorrow will help people find comfort about the head and the neck. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really important point. And it's sort of something that we were talking about yesterday, that people will go into a position and you can make the assumption that the position that they've adopted is the most comfortable position. And that would be a very, very funny assumption to make, because they'll go into the position that's habitual, which may not be the most comfortable. So, whereas after all your wiggles around this morning and you all went to sleep on the table, correct me if I'm wrong, but you all looked comfortable because of all the wriggling. You know, I'm not saying, I mean, you know, it's auto-suggestion that you're all asleep, but I can go to sleep in that position. You were more comfortable at the end than the beginning for most of you, but not all of you. Yeah? You weren't more comfortable at the end than you were at the beginning. No. And you weren't either. So, you know, my rule about ATMs is 70% of people will probably have a somewhat predictable effect. There'll be a couple of percentage who will have no effect, and there'll be a percentage of people who have the opposite effect. You just always have to factor that in any of your predictions. Sorry? Yep. That's your fault, it's not my fault. No, just teasing. It's nobody's fault. That's why I'm making a joke about it, because it is what it is. You know, if your ambition is that everybody in the room has a positive effect. Have you ever taught a lesson, Ruth, where everybody in the room has had a positive effect that's similar? I'm going to ask you too, Jenny. Yeah. Yep. Just the wrong time, the wrong place. Yep. Frequently. Yep. So, you know, at best, if you have a couple of people who have no effect, you know, that's actually a really good scenario, where there's no effect. And that's perfectly fine. It's not a lesson that either haven't learned from it or they can't sense the change. It doesn't matter. It's like if I, all right, now I've got off on a tangent. Poor Linda's lying there going. So, have a look at the person now asymmetrical and notice the things that you noticed about yourself It's actually easier to see the shape of a spine than it is to sense it, for most people. So you can have a look first, and then you can have a copper feel, and feel where the C7 is and the shape of the spine if you want to add to it. And then slowly, Linda, can you change your head to the other side and your arms? And the point here is to let them settle as well, because where they land might not be comfortable, and they might just want to do that little thing that she just did. So what am I looking at? Now I'm looking at, does she take up the same shape going this way? Could I guess what her favourite is? Maybe I would guess that the way that she lay down first with her face to the left is her favourite, but it might not be. Which is your favourite? Going to the left, yeah. There's just something about this one, she's slightly, her head's slightly more that way, so more flexed forward. And this shoulder is down a little bit, this one's here, so she sort of, if I exaggerate more like that, if you come back to the left, now she's changed and I put my hands on her. So, you know, oh, I see now her head's doing that as well. It's curving towards the left. But, you know, I wouldn't have made a prediction either way, other than that she chose it first. So have a look at the thing. So what else did I ask you to scan for when you lay on your front on the table? Apart from down that end, up this end. Where you were on the cheek? Yep. So you can see that Linda's not on her ear. She's more sort of here. So her vertical line is going to run that way, not here, or not here, wherever yours was. And her ability to, if we ask her, and we will later, to roll in her nose into the table, she's going to quickly roll onto her nose versus back. So we'll, yep, have a look at that. So seeing, again, remembering how it felt to roll and which you liked. So which do you like, rolling into the table or away from the table? Away. She likes rolling away. I'll say it again because I've got a very bad habit, and people who listen to me teaching on the tapes, you should remind me as well, of pointing and waving my arms and not saying it. And if you haven't got the camera, you think, what's she doing? So we can all be a team about helping me learn. Okay, so we can look at that. And what I'm looking at, so what am I looking at? What did you feel in yourself as you rolled your head about the influence? Just shout out stuff and I'll repeat it. Weight under your hip can change. It's what you felt. Oh, under your chest can change. Yep. The shoulder can change position. Yep. Yep, you can have movement in your pelvis. Some do and some don't. Your arm can lengthen a little bit. And this one, the weight goes on the elbow a little bit. Yep. The weight changes in the knees. Yep, all of these are possibilities. And in your feet. Yep. And then let her have a rest. And now can you quietly swap over? And slowly begin to roll again. So she's not quite in the same position as she was to start with, because this shoulder is much flatter than it was when she was to the right before. So she has a slightly different strategy about that shoulder coming up a little bit. So you could wonder about, is that shoulder being pulled up, or is actually she using this arm to push a little bit or whatever? So the purpose of that little exercise is to simply notice what the person does and contrast one side to the other. Okay? So if you want to know the purpose of that, that's that. All right. Now, we can start clarifying stuff. So let's give Linda an anatomy lesson that is not dissimilar to what you did in the ATM, but rather than diving straight into the sternal notch, which is tricky to find underneath, and C7, which can be a little bit tricky to find, we'll map the territory a little bit by finding, you can do this, turn your head to the side that you like. We might as well give them some comfort, cold comfort. All right. So let's start giving them a little bit of an anatomy lesson in the form of questions. Holy crap, she just hit a note, not. But good on you for trying, love. All right, so I'm finding the front of the point of her shoulders, and here I'm saying, okay, this is interesting. So this makes sense to me. This shoulder is much higher off the table, and this one's quite low. So that's what she's feeling. So I'm kind of mapping out the asymmetry. And then if I go a little bit inland, I can find her collarbones. Now, just in terms of time management, I'm mapping both at the same time. If you want to do it singly for your own sake, that's fine. But for Linda, she can cope. And it's the first question is, did you know that you've got this? Did you know that it's got this? Did you know that it comes from here? Do you know that it goes all the way into here? And, you know, ends kind of there. And then you can do a little bit of exploration about just making a suggestion to Linda that this is your pattern, is that this shoulder, this clavicle is pointing a little bit more that way, and this one is sort of down, it's closer to the table. That's what I think my hands are saying. Whether they are or not, who knows? Yeah. Here I'm on the clavicles. So these bits here. So we'll get the skeleton in a minute, and I can show you on the skeleton next door, because, yeah, it's hard to see, but I'm on the clavicle, and I've started from the front of the point of the shoulder, and then the clavicles are actually from the top, but you can go inland, you can find them on yourself, and go into here. Mine are really the bumpy bits here. And then, of course, in here is the sternal notch. So rather than going straight to the sternal notch, I've found the way to the clavicles. And hopefully given her a sense of where they are in space. So where they are internal to her, reference to her, but where they are in space. Thank you very much. So if I reproduce, so Linda doesn't like that, she likes that. And she's got that. About like that. So she's got some twist. Now this guy doesn't twist as much, like he's doing all of his twist up here, which is okay. But just to make it a little bit more like where Linda's got her twist distributed, which is something that you sensed in yourself, it's sort of more like that, but she's more flexed like that. Okay? So what I've done is just held here, the fronts of the shoulders, and you can touch it, and if you give a little bit of a lift, it actually helps people to sense where it is in space as well. Just going with, and I'm just thinking about what her position is, that this one's a little bit here and this one's a little bit here. So the little tiny movement helps them sense where they are, because we sense through movement. Who knew? So then I can go a bit more inland and I come onto the clavicles, can you see? And I can just, with the flats of my fingers, trace the path of the clavicles underneath until I get right underneath there where they actually meet the sternum. Okay? In a way that's not, hopefully not creepy. Okay, and then, so again, so that Linda gets a bit of a sense of where they are, a little tiny movement of lifting, like that, which is actually the same movement as before, but it's coming from the clavicles, of lifting the clavicle, and it will take that back a bit, and a little tiny movement here. of that? Just again, because it shows her where she is. Do you think? Loaded question. Would you dare to say, no, it made no sense to me whatsoever? Yeah, talking rubbish. Okay, so that's the front sort of thing. Then here is nice to come onto the back. So I'm coming to the back of the shoulder and finding the scapula. So my thumb is now in that kind of groove there. And there's the spine of the scapula here, and then the inside border of the scapula and the outside border of the scapula, and it's there. And I can fossick around a bit and it will tell her so much, won't it? But if then I take her arm and I'm making a nice little sling with my hand like this underneath the front of her arm, and then I'm making a nice little sling here with the shoulder blade, and I can just lift a little bit and take it down. So go slowly, and I'm bringing my hand up to take the weight of her upper arm, and I'm on the junction, you know, sort of right where the pecs are, and then slowly lifting and down. And now, and she's helping me a little bit, which is perfectly fine because I'm quite lazy. Then I can just start moving the whole of her scapula. Yeah, it's pinching around it. So if I do it over here, this hand is like this, and it's on the junction, so that when I lift, if I was just on the arm and I lifted, she'd lift more, her elbow would lift off more. But and you can feel the difference. If I'm on the junction and I lift, the elbow will slide. His doesn't, but then the whole thing will go back. So feel the difference between that and that. And then this hand is like this, around the borders. Yeah. So that when I'm guiding her back, I'm getting a bit of slide like that. And of course, also, if you go far enough, so if it's only a tiny bit, you'll just get slide like that. If it's a lot more, you'll get rotation it's actually rotation up here and down here. Just play around with that. Now, what you'll find is that if you really hold here, when you come back, they'll drop lower. And you might think, oh, that's lovely, they've let go, but it might really hurt their neck because then they've gone flat like that. Because there's a reason why your shoulder's up, so that your neck doesn't have to be like that. So that's not a sign of, you might think, oh, it's a sign of success, they've gone flat and they've let go, but it could actually hurt. So just watch that. Have let go. Yeah, because I've taken over the work. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. You won't hurt. People won't let themselves be hurt unless they're in very unprotective mode. So now's your chance to make a qualified mistake and see what happens. Yeah. Like really. You know, like, not fast, because you know what's going to happen if it's fast. If they're asleep, they'll drop, then they'll wake up. Or it'll just make them really hypervigilant because they don't trust you anymore. That's the answer. But just to be aware that's possible. Okay, so that's that. So what have we done? We've looked, we've felt, just to get a sense of where the turn is in the thing. We've watched them turn, so we get more information about what they're doing. And at this point, don't get too cognitive about what you're seeing. And by cognitive, I mean like too cause and effect and analytical. Like you want to do enough, but just pick a couple of things because there's so much to see. And if you try and see everything, then your decision making is going to be really hard. So maybe just pick a couple of things to see, like as they turn their head, What's the movement of the two scapulae? Something like that. But just a couple of things. As you get better, you know, you'll take a snapshot and the whole kind of gestalt of it will be in your mind, and that's fine. But be reasonable around, you know, the amount of information you let in to make a decision. Okay, and because we're particularly interested in working and clarifying how the scapula engages with the chest and then the chest with the pelvis and so on, start with just looking at that. Okay, so then we've clarified the position of the shoulders. And most people will have one higher and one lower, but not all. Like me, I'll lie like that, and then when I get up, wonder why I've got such a sore neck, because I'm so low tone, drives me nuts. So it might not be, so note what it is, and then clarify, clavicle, 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 all the way inland, come back, scapula, scapula. And look, if you don't know exactly where it is, you're somewhere in the ballpark. It's somewhere in there, you know, so don't get to dig around, fossick about, you'll find a bone. Sorry? No, dig around. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Just make a decision that it's somewhere there. Make a decision that it's somewhere there, and stop fossicking, because you're not anthropologists at, you know, digging up bones. Just make a decision. It's somewhere here, and do it. Put your hand there, commit. Is that clear? So that you're not constantly poking and... Sorry? Don't go for the lymph nodes under here, no. Okay, so there's that. And then you can don't try, just do it. Have a gentle palpation, exploration around the right scapula, knowing that then when you come back here and you do the lift, that if you get to the point where their chest rolls, see if you've got enough attention left that you're busy watching here, but you've got just enough attention here to recognise that if the chest rolls, that scapula is going to come forward as well. And that's something that would be interesting for that person to feel at some point. Right, so, and this is the point that we're making with Anna's FI yesterday, is you can be working on somebody's side and they think that everything's happening here, but everything, of course, is also happening on the underneath side. Okay, so let's just try that. So if I just demonstrate, if my hand is further down here and I lift, see I've just got her arm. That's her arm flapping. Of course, it will engage her scapula because I can, but if I'm on the junction, I'm going immediately to her scapula. Right, see the difference? So again, feel free to try both to convince yourself, like don't take my word for gospel. I might tell you bad things. I might tell you something that's not true. So you have to go and check the veracity of what I've said. And then if I continue to lift more, and I haven't got this hand here purposely just so that you can see, that there will start to be, as her chest starts to turn, there will be some movement in the other. And remember to go slowly in the lift. So if I just go clunk and bang straight onto her skeleton, it's not particularly nice. So I'm making enough time. This is the right social order, is that I greet, you know, the clothes first, skin, muscle, bone, movement. That's the right social order. I don't meet the skeleton first and bypass the other crowd. So that's a few times. Then it might be nice for Linda to know about her spine. So I can start here on the back of her, like here. And again, I'm using this kind of grip, so that what I'm this kind of grip. So what I'm feeling is with the flats of my fingers. You should be able to do this method and have those talons, you know, like women have with all the coloured business. They don't have the coloured business because you're not ever doing that. You're always doing that. Okay, so okay, so there, that's 01 and whatever, and then I'm again working down her neck like this, feeling on either side of the spinous processes. So I'm not being pokey around finding the individual bones, but just mapping how that turn happens. So my thinking there is, that's really interesting, Linda. I can feel, so here you turned here, and then as I go down, it kind of turns, so that by the time I get to here, so C7T1, these, oh, nasty dislocation of C7 there, that would move very easily. That actually, it's almost in a line. There's not much more twist happening. That's what I'm thinking. Is where's the twist? My question is, where's the twist? Where's the twist? And I can keep working down either side. Now, when I get to here, I'm a little bit more like that, because there's a whole, I can't go either side of the neck like I can here. My fingers will be closer together because there's a lot more muscle in the gutters here. So it's more, you can see I'm just tracing down the gutters, both sides. Out of curiosity about, is there any more twist down here? And, you know, you can imagine it's like an ant pathway going down. It says, no, there's not a heap more twist after here. Yep. And that'll be different. So it's a bit of an anatomy lesson, and it's a bit like you're saying, look, I think I'm seeing this. I just want to find out with my fingers about if what I'm seeing is true, what I feel and what I see. How does that feel, Linda? Okay. Yeah. No particular judgments about, oh my God, she's so stiff. There's no twist in her thoracic. It's just, yeah. No, none of that. It's just, this is how it is. This is how it is. Oh, this is how it is. This is how it is. This is how it is. Yeah, so people like me, low tone, who do that with no shoulder up, and because I just collapse, and you'll feel it. You'll feel a tension on one side and not on the other. And when you feel that tension in the soft tissues, chances are it's not good. And then you would put a bolster under my shoulder because you would feel it. Yep. Yep. So Linda is smart. She holds her shoulder up. I'm not. And I just go, my shoulders collapse, and then I wonder why I get neck ache. So for me, you would put something under my shoulder. I remember Basil Glazer giving me an FI, and he was just in a torture because he thought he could teach my system to protect and have this sort of tone. 45 minutes later, nada. So, you know, I'm a work in progress. Okay, so we've mapped now where the twist is happening and not happening, and that's interesting. We could map this scapula, and we've moved it back, and now we'll put them together again. So can you come back again? That's it. So now I'm going to show Linda something that that might be interesting for her. Not, Linda, did you know, and I'm not saying this to her physically, my hands are saying this to her. When I lift up here and your scapula comes back so she can feel that movement, did you know that, and now my thumb is in the left gutter, and it's just encouraging her thoracic spine to turn, that can happen. That you can get a twist there and then it can come back. Or you can get a twist there, and she's so attentive, she's doing it all for me because I don't have my hands away, she doesn't do anything. You asked, I did it. Okay. So, but that's fine because she's a helper. And then I can work my way down and I can just show her, again, it's not in any particular judgment, that some vertebrae rotate more than others. When I lift up here, or maybe I'm just saying to her, look, they all do it. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that nice? Isn't that sense of connection nice? And I could work all the way up. And then I could put my hands on her neck and show her, yeah, so it even connects up into your head. So this hand is active. This hand is going along for the ride, but like it's the, you know, the shining the torch business. I'm shining a torch saying, notice this, notice this, notice this. As I do this, notice this, notice this, notice this, notice this. And then let her be for a moment. So I'll let her be and I'll just recap on this side. So I've mapped, map. Here, then I come back to this, lift, and this thumb is on this side of the spinous process, and I'm lifting, and as she turns, this thumb is going, this happens, 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 you know, and that's where, that's revolting, C7, but that's what you would feel some relative movement and relative not movement, maybe. But at this stage, we're just going for chunks. And then when I get up to here, you won't be able to get your thumb in so much. So I'm just doing that grip and showing that relationship between as she rolls, her head will roll a little bit as well, and so forth, like that. Is that clear? You can do it in any order, but yeah. Probably, for some reason, I was like here because it's the most obvious. Start there, work down, come back, work up. So it's chest, back to the C7T1, work up. The order is fine. Is that enough? You can do it on the other side. You can't, yes, do it on the other side. Little tiny bit. So the stuff on the board, it's like a little tiny bit of it to remind her and remind him or her and remind you. So it's like just, you know, a few, one or two. Oh, other side, yeah. Then you explore the other side as a contrast. Okay. Any questions? Thanks, Linda. Do you feel one-sided?